This is the ban bus, the latest move in a well-coordinated multinational campaign to ban cluster bombs. John Rodsted knows plenty about campaigning. He was part of a group that secured an historic treaty in 1997 banning landmines, and a Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts. Well, since I've seen you last, John, what's been happening?
What's been happening? We've come a long way. You think when we went to Lebanon at the beginning of 2007 together, and then we went to Oslo for the very beginning of this whole process, and simply the Norwegian government...
Together with colleague Kevin Bryant and his partner Meta, they are part of the Cluster Munitions Coalition.
And now, on Monday, the end game starts, where we end up with the world coming here to Dublin to attempt to pull this treaty together. So it's going to be 2 weeks of really tough fighting it out, making a strong treaty. So this is what it's all culminated to.
Today, John and his crew are taking the campaign to a local high school in Derry.
Basically, we'd take any platform, whether it's a school. Last night we were in a pub. We were in Parliament in Belfast the other day. It's all about spreading the word. Morning. Morning. My name's John Rodsted. Got a couple of colleagues, particularly my colleague here, Kevin Bryant. We've both spent a lot of our adult life working in places that are either at war or where wars are finished. One of the saddest things, it's not the difference in the wars that I see, it's the similarities.
For 20 years, from Afghanistan to Kosovo to Cambodia, Rodsted has seen the human damage caused by cluster bombs.
Depending on what one is being used, they will split open, and hundreds of these little devices are going to start raining down over the target. An average aircraft bomb will hold about 600 of these little, what they're called bomblets. And they'll spread out in the air, and they'll come down, and one bomb will cover the area of about 2 football fields. And they'll start hitting the ground and they'll detonate.
Here's some of his own video footage in the field.
And here we are at Bagram with an estimated 60,000 tonnes of munitions that need cleaning up. Quite a task. I won't fool around in this place for terribly long, because I admit to feeling quite uncomfortable being here. For the last 2 weeks I've been travelling southern Lebanon, documenting the devastation that's been caused by the Israeli use of cluster bombs here. Huge numbers of these things fail to explode. These things will lay around the ground, they'll be stuck in trees, they'll be on the ground, if they hit soft ground they'll be under the ground, and they will just lay there in wait for somebody to innocently, years later, come in contact with these things.
John strikes a chord with the kids, and there's no shortage of questions.
Yep.
Will there ever be a time when you could say there is no cluster landmines and it's safe?
Will there ever be a time when there's no cluster bombs and landmines? We certainly hope so. That's what we're working on. We want this stuff to disappear.
Who wants cluster munitions banned? Cluster bombs, who wants them banned? I think that's everybody. Well done.
Thanks, guys. Derry's off around here somewhere. Yeah. We're going to come down through Strabane, Donegal, Ballyshannon, Sligo, and get ourselves to Westport. We'll stay there tonight, and then we're going to meet up.
The next morning, the team pack the van and prepare for another day on the road. What do you got, John?
Oh, I just got a couple of things. My teaching aids. Nothing like walking around with a fistful of, luckily, fake cluster bombs.
They're the ones you used in the school the other day?
They're the ones we used in the school. We'll use those today as well.
Which are the ones in Lebanon that were,
These ones.
They're the ones that get caught in the trees, eh?
Yep, and these are the ones which supposedly had the self-destruct mechanism that failed by their thousands. So that's the old technology, Vietnam War era, so-called new technology, Lebanon War era, both failed. That's our argument.
They're off to spread their message at the Famine March, a 10-kilometre walk for all those who died during the Great Irish Famine of the 1800s.
The whole point of why we're against cluster bombs is people can't use the land and they've got a dangerous environment. It is the same. If you have these things, you create famines, you create lack of development, you hold people in a poverty trap permanently. It doesn't go away.
Before the march, the participants gather here in County Mayo.
I'm sick and tired of the arrogance of governments and the arrogance of militaries who couldn't care less. They do not care about the end result. They will smash the hell out of a place and move on and say, bad luck, you're stuck with a legacy, not our problem.
On the walk, he is relentless in spreading his message, saying civil society is involved because organisations like the UN are ineffective.
They have a talk fest. They have a talk fest that is not going to achieve anything because of consensus. Then they just say, oh well, can't do anything, that's the status quo. So what?
Yeah.
That's
it's the structure of the organisation, all the reasons.
Back on the band bus and off to Dublin. But Rodsted's day is not over yet. His blog is read around the world.
And you do get feedback? Oh, we get feedback. We get positive feedback from the governments and from civil society. And I'm sure as some of the stuff I wrote is going to start making some people nervous. And that's just bad luck for them if they're doing some silly backroom games. Tough luck if we're writing about it. The treaty must not be half-cocked. It's like being half dead or a little bit pregnant. You're either dead, pregnant, or you have a strong treaty. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay, bad bus is coming!
It's a hero's welcome as the bus arrives in Dublin, and Rodsted is ready with a final pep talk before tomorrow's conference.
The simple thing for everybody from civil society, which is all of you, is that we are here to pressure them like crazy. They do not get any slack movement. They have to work for us and they have to do what we demand of them. So that's the end of the day. We're going to have 2 hard weeks. We're going to make it happen. We're going to have a good band. Let's get to work. Yes, sir.
Good morning, John.
Good morning, David. How you doing?
Smart this morning?
Oh, I feel very formal. I think we've got a big 2 weeks ahead of us.
These campaigners have travelled from around the globe. Where are you from?
I was born in Laos and from the US.
I'm from Germany.
From France.
You're from where, man?
United States.
United Kingdom.
I'm from Uganda.
As well as the activists, almost 130 nations are here to draw up a treaty. But some very big players are notably absent, including China, Russia, Israel, India and the US.
Not browbeating people from...
Jodie Williams shared the Nobel Peace Prize for her work securing the landmine ban. She's critical that the US isn't here this time around for a cluster bomb treaty.
You know, with the landmine treaty, the US was at least involved. They were there right up until the last day so that you could confront them directly. Here, they've really been pushing from behind, and they don't really care if they totally trash this treaty. They'd be happy if they did.
Why? Just from the layman's point of view.
They didn't like it that civil society was able to have a serious voice in helping determine what weapons are legal and what weapons are not. They don't want to see that happen again.
If what Jodie says is true, then these anti-cluster campaigners have their work cut out for them. Ireland's Foreign Minister is chairing the conference. He comes out to accept a global petition signed by over 700,000 people.
Martin, our Minister for Foreign Affairs. Very pleased to meet you.
He's greeted by a cluster bomb victim from Afghanistan.
Good morning, sir. I'm Suraj from Afghanistan, affected by cluster munition. Let's come together and to make a strong treaty.
Thank you for coming. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
Thank you.
The conference gets down to business. Aside from this opening session, the media will be excluded. Rodsted already suspects Australia will be playing a spoiler role.
I look forward to bailing them up and seeing where they've moved. I've seen things they've written and they seem to be weakening their position, or they're only talking about part of the issues they've got. So I really want to find out what they're about.
Unacceptable harm to civilians.
As the delegates set out to work, the Australian delegation aren't happy to be filmed.
Hello? Are you filming us?
Yes.
I hope you're not filming sound.
No sound's going, only background sound.
Okay, because we don't have a discussion here.
Oh, are you from Australia? You're from Australia, are you?
Yeah.
As the meeting continues behind closed doors, talks focus on the wording of the treaty. Even defining what a cluster bomb is and how many bomblets it contains is being debated. These technicalities are lost on the survivors, who are gathered outside sharing their stories.
My son was killed on his 5th birthday, exactly, from a cluster bomb dropped by Israel in South Lebanon.
One small group that is calling...
Downstairs, the non-government campaigners are busily working on their lobbying strategies.
For a total ban, nothing less, so I think that's what we need to do.
We have some very positive countries, and we also have the key problematic countries. But for those of you who are on positive countries, on whatever issue they're positive on, please get them to be vocal in the informal sessions.
As the conference breaks for tea, John is being recorded for his multimedia blog. He's convinced the Australians want to water down some key points.
Australia is giving very mixed messages about what they actually want from this treaty process. They talk about having a really good, strong, tight treaty, but then they talk about having exceptions for the way that they can conduct coalition conflicts, say with the likes of the United States, and also they demand to have stockpiles kept for training purposes. The training purposes stockpile is ridiculous, as there's not a clearance operation in the world that ever trains on live cluster bombs.
I was hoping to ask the Australians for their response to John's claims. But by the end of the next day, my repeated request for an interview still hadn't been approved. Morning, John.
Morning, David.
Okay, spread yourselves. So what's happening today here?
Day 4, well, we're going to have a public protest. We've got everyone just going to turn up and lay down, sort of simulating what you get after a strike. Yeah, just to get to the public knowledge of what's going on with cluster bombs happening.
The activists are angry that the latest proposal being discussed at the conference would allow countries like the USA, who won't sign the treaty, to use cluster bombs when participating in a joint military operation with a country who has signed. They call that interoperability.
We're off to the US Embassy. We've just got the police loitering over there and we don't want to give the game away too early.
But they're proposing language which says they can directly participate in planning and execution of joint operations with the U.S. using cluster bombs. Hello? That is an obvious violation of the intent of this treaty. If you don't want to sign the treaty, UK, if you don't want to sign the treaty, Canada, if you don't want to sign the treaty, Australia, don't sign it. But don't ruin it for the rest of the world. On behalf of the United States, quit appeasing the United States of America.
Back on the bus, and Rodsted's fired up.
What are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next up, it's Vietnam. We're not going to Vietnam though, we're going to the US Embassy, because they have been bombing the hell out of the world since Vietnam, so we're kind of sick of it. 40 odd years later, and people are still suffering from the legacy of a long gone war.
Okay, we're going to go up this way and then cross the road. This way.
What do you want?
Shame! Stop meddling with our treaty. USA, shame on you. USA, shame on you.
We are the Iraqis. survivor cluster bomb survivors. We asking USA, why you use the cluster against the civilians?
The campaigners are unsuccessful in meeting with the US ambassador, so it's another lie-in.
You would want to start it.
And then it's back to the conference.
Yeah, back to the meetings. Two different sides you put.
What are they?
Well, you push one way and you play the game at times another way, so it's a little bit of everything. You've got to do a bit of campaigning, you've got to do a bit of business. It's all part of it.
It's breakfast time for these victims of cluster munitions. They're about to receive some significant news.
Victim assistance is probably the biggest victory of the past week.
For the first time, governments have financially committed themselves to assisting victims of cluster bombs. The Australian delegation are credited for playing a key role.
You're getting countries recognise that within this treaty you have to recognise people. You've got to recognise the humanitarian issues that are at the heart of the treaty, absolutely.
At the end of the day. The second week kicks off with more closed-door talks, and there's a notable air of tension as the media is kept away.
It's on non-press.
Sorry.
Don't touch my camera, madam.
Oh, can you not stop filming?
No, I can film out here.
Yeah, but you can't film. You can't actually film in there. You can't.
Locked out, I follow the NGO briefings and am surprised to see two senior figures defying their government's position and addressing the crowd.
I'm happy to be here and I look forward to a positive outcome by Friday evening. I know the British government is one of the ones that's a bit iffy about some of the issues and I've been told to be here and keep an eye on them so we see what they're doing.
Patrick Leahy is a powerful US senator. For years he's campaigned against landmines and cluster bombs. Why has America been so difficult about banning cluster bombs?
America being difficult is first time for everything. My own government is not participating and I regret that. But I came here because I wanted people to know that there are members of our Congress, House and Senate, who support this effort.
But it helps enormously.
While the media lockout continues, the conference is broadcast outside on these TVs.
Australia's actually sticking themselves up to be one of the real bad guys. We started to see a little bit of movement in the British position, and Australia came back being Mr. Tough Guy. So they're actually getting left behind.
I spoke to the information officer from the Australian Foreign Affairs Department. He said they're still waiting on permission for me to interview the ambassador.
I think it's ridiculous. I think they're ducking for cover because they're embarrassed with their position. I mean, you know, you're either proud of, you're here to represent your country and you've got to be proud of exactly what you're saying, or you're embarrassed about it.
With 4 days left of the conference, the treaty still hangs in the balance and the pressure is building. The Cluster Munition Coalition are updating their blog.
We've stepped a long way forward from the really offending text that was on the table a few days ago.
But we're running out of time.
We are definitely running out of time. We've got this afternoon and tomorrow to make this thing really come together. So, yeah, clock's ticking. Gloves are off, and you can see the intensity from the diplomats as well as the NGOs. We all realise we've got a lot to do in a short period of time.
With 3 days to go, the morning brings some remarkable news. This is the front page of The Guardian.
Front page of The Guardian from London. It says the government is preparing to scrap Britain's entire arsenal of cluster bombs in the face of the growing clamour against weapons that have killed and maimed hundreds of innocent civilians.
What's that mean to you?
That's absolutely phenomenal. That's a complete change in the UK position, that the UK have been the most dogmatic country holding on to issues of still being able to use them under certain conditions or stockpile them. That's a complete 180 degrees, which is fantastic.
Rodsted knows a critical moment has arrived one which will impact all the key nations.
So today there's going to be a text come out which will actually be the first full draft of the treaty, which is great. But bottom line, it looks like the UK's crumbling. And if the UK crumbles, that's going to leave Canada and Australia standing pretty well on their own with America. And apparently the word from the UK is they're demanding all US stockpiles out of the UK within 6 or 8 years. I'm not sure which one it was. Which is just a fabulous movement from the most belligerent country. So if that happens, Australia is going to start looking really stupid standing on their own, trying to still keep this concept of interoperability and use of clusters and the existence of clusters alive.
This morning, the first full version of the treaty will be announced. The committee thrashes out the wording of the text, again behind those closed doors. The screens outside remain the eyes and ears for most of the 300 campaigners.
Okay, this is the key one. Article 1, General Scope and Obligations. This is the interoperability one. I'll give you a wrap in 1 second as soon as he goes through it.
But again, my filming causes a problem.
You're not allowed to film the screens. Not allowed to.
Late in the night, the governments agree on a treaty. It'll be formally adopted on the last day of the conference, in less than 48 hours. But the campaigners have not got their way on 2 key points. Countries that sign the treaty are able to cooperate militarily with those who do not. And cluster bombs have not been banned altogether. Now, each bomb will only have a maximum of 10 bomblets, not the 600 they usually carry.
With it. It's a strong humanitarian outcome. It's got very good provisions to assist victims of cluster munitions, and it bans an entire class of weapons. So that's a great outcome. In addition, of course, it preserves for Australia and others the ability to operate in coalitions with the United States and in UN peace enforcement operations, which is obviously very important to us. Well, what I like about Article 2021, which is...
Despite the friction between the Australian delegation and the campaigners for the past 2 weeks, now that the treaty has been agreed on, all seems forgiven.
Did you find civil society a damn nuisance or a help on the whole?
I think civil society's got a great deal to be proud about.
I think you guys should feel very proud of yourselves. I mean, you really drove a lot of this process, and we've got a very strong humanitarian outcome.
We're 90% happy with it, 95% happy. The problem has always been this clause over interoperability. Disappointingly, the wording for that was written by the Australians. So, they've got a bit of a contribution in that. But I think it's so heavily stigmatised, we're going to have a treaty that's going to hold up. So, yeah, all in all, tired. You do feel a bit flat at the end of these things, but it's good. It's good. It's a good result, and it's time to sort of blow off this whole diplomatic world and get back to the real world, because this ain't it.
Inside, the treaty is agreed on, with a commitment to ratify it at the end of the year in Norway.
So, are you ready? You ready? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ready!